Before I start this video, I would like to state two things. The first is please click away now, and the second is that I don't think in any way whatsoever. Alright, and with that, let's get started. Before I start this video, I would like to state two things. Video game,
3D game, dungeon game,
single-player games,
game of rock, paper, scissors,
2001 PS2 game,
horror games.
NRA Game Club was
with a
developed
wide
by
array of
NRA Game Club was developed
with a
by
wide with a
NRA
wide with a wide array of ways to get torn to shreds. Neo could have been a
NRA Game Club was developed by Jarhead Games, a budget development team responsible for middle road outdoor and military gun games. Gun Club released to extremely poor reviews, and had gameplay consisting of just shooting different guns.
A player's job is not merely to provide inputs.
So why should guns be any different? In the race to create the most authentic modern military shooter, EA and Activision used their Battlefield and Call of Duty games to create the most authentic modern military shooter.
Taking this a step further, the game might even force players to adopt certain desires or behaviors.
But this raises further questions. In 2012, NRA President Wayne Lapierre stated that nowhere on any list are video game companies listed. EA, never being a stranger to controversy, got in contact with weapons manufacturers for the legal use of default good guy weapons, not only because they're a cheap black market alternative that pose a real-world threat to gun sales, but they're a cheap black market alternative that pose a real-world threat to gun sales.
Their brains are more fried than trying horse tranquilizer in Philly. Due to the nature of it, I don't want to show a whole ton. Right, visuals, which again can be one of the biggest pitfalls in this genre, and the good ones tend to avoid it. It's the kind of game where it feels like that kind of thing doesn't matter much. Besides, as you may have suspected, this is a very audio-centric game.
Are AAA developers really funneling money into
The typing game, I can safely say, I wasn't expecting the typing game to be one of my favorites. Mainly because it's a typing game. The difference is that this is a slow dungeon crawler. Even then, while it's not a typing game, there is a typing option for combat. So it still doesn't have to be combat. It's all about typing as fast as humanly possible. It is easy to understand, but you do have a lot to consider. But like any good dungeon, there are a warrior, assassin, a bard, and a switch.
an on-the-fly switch.
Weirdo characters throughout all of it evolve on Earth, which means they have the khaki pants of role-playing games. Typing, if you avoid the game's typing to try and softlock yourself, he calls you out on it.
All you had to do was type, I outright instructed you. I even outright instructed you.
He follows this up with a step-by-step guide on how to refund the game. If you couldn't tell already,
The game is too hard.
I fear how many hours this man spent in front of a dick.
I never thought rats would be capable of an erection.
The story itself is
Shit.
It can be useful to picture the interactivity which occurs between the player and some body part, while the computer feeds the player outputs in the form of inputs. Of course, a pair of words will never truly sum up this complex interaction, but desire and motivation seem like a reasonable enough summary. Audiovisual information. These two types of audiovisual communication form an audiovisual feedback loop. That said, the surface level of the feedback loop is clearly not the purpose of the game. Otherwise, it could be the purpose of the game. Otherwise, it could be automated with a mechanical button presser. Enjoyment is not merely derived from seeing some body part. At this point, we enter the realm of psychology, but it's not necessary to know the underlying causes for the purposes of this discussion. Naturally, players need a reason to take any action at all, and therefore motivation. Desire and motivation. Have you ever found a game to be pointless? Have you ever found a game to be rewarding, only to revisit it and find that it no longer provides such satisfaction? It's possible to feel rewarded by a game one day and not the next. The outputs seem meaningless. Punishment feels imminent. Nobody could be expected to override their aversion to such a horrific punishment by willpower alone. But we can also see that a sufficiently numbed and reckless player would still not be motivated by fear. If you're reluctant to admit that it's actually the player who self-punishes, some of the reflection on your own experiences might make this more obvious. It might be the case that audio-visual communication is no longer necessary.
I suppose glaring into the uncaring void of the future isn't quite as satisfying as the catharsis of complaining in the immediate present. I would know, I've ranted for longer than most. I've accepted the futility of railing against the infinite future, redoing everything that came before. That still doesn't alleviate my life in the present being overrun with this stuff at the cost of something new. All this to say, I've accepted reality, but it hasn't made my dreams any less restless. And it would be nice to wake up and be somewhere different this time.
In a video game, you are that character. You are in control. You are in the dangerous situation instead of the characters on their own. Well, turns out, no, not at all.
It seems reasonable to assume that players can exert a certain amount of control over their intrinsic motivators. Therefore, in many cases, players can simply invalidate extrinsic motivation. No matter how many tricks are deployed, games happen in your mind, including their punishments, rewards, and everything else in between.
You yourself are never in any peril. When you realize this, you may wonder, why do you feel scared at all? You are a person safely separated from the horrific world. Now, it could be that many can still separate themselves from video game protagonists with all of their real human weaknesses and be spooked.
Let me break this down, because honestly, I did not get this at first. The mammoth. Team Ninja understand a good
Audio-visual feedback
loop, though. You gotta have incentive to be active rather than passive. There's far more skill and satisfaction in being bold. You gotta put your neck on the line and aim for the last second. This aids the more assertive playstyle, making dangerous performance more enticing. There's greater incentive to go through whole attack chains without fear of penalty. Lay down a consistent beating. You gotta remember as well, this isn't some secret rude dude glitch. It's a smart idea for those who can multitask. Team Ninja offer up bits to do with your hands in between slicing and dicing. Rather than always hitting the same button to get back your expenditure, you have to keep hitting the same button to get back your expenditure. You can't just go back to where you started off, making it not just riskier, but trickier.
The vast majority of people probably pick
Busting my balls. And I love it.
Hypothetically, a game might send signals which directly stimulate a player's body part in such a way as to cause certain
Masochism,
which forces the player to believe that
blowing your load,
is the most important goal. For that period of time, it would no longer be possible to draw a meaningful distinction between the player and any worrying implications. This could be a very enjoyable activity, but it would cease to be
Legal.
Such communication is inherently ambiguous, but can be quite subtle and nuanced nonetheless. For example, For example, what does this image represent? A simple answer would be that it represents the character's health display, but perhaps you've already skipped to a deeper intuition which can be summed up more easily. Danger. These are two different levels of interpretation. The first order interpretation understands the purpose of the second order interpretation understands the implication of the first order interpretation, which can be rationally explained as a simple measurement of a quantifiable statistic.
Do you seriously follow this pretentious little prick?
Quite difficult to As such, we can assume that typical motivators are typically appealing. Games frequently involve life or death situations, but thankfully those struggles are not real. So even if a game features a very enjoyable activity for the protagonist, the only one truly punished by a setback is the player. Therefore, we might say that punishment is for players. Similarly, every piece of audio-visual information must be a player in order to make any sense. With that in mind, we should ask a simple question. If a developer includes cutscenes, they will inevitably cause players to suffer. Every second indulging the story is another second
open to all sorts of rudeness. I'll fully admit I'm no expert on
a limp regurgitation of something that came before. To try and judge the merit of any of this as art seems like a farce. If respect is on some sort of gradient, I suppose you could say I respect on some sort of gradient. If that statement sounds at all offensive, I'm not sorry, because it's just a statement of fact. More to the point though, how do you respect a remake? Well, you can't. At the end of the day, the ultimate sign of respect would be to just accept the original as perfect. And there's no doubt in my mind a lot of gamers will be perfect. Right now we're all being forced to live our life in this weird
audio-visual feedback
loop.
Yet games can't do it for me anymore. And after years of thinking about it, the reason why finally clicked into place when I was playing Silent Hill 1 and 2 for the first time recently. Games are, of course,
audio-visual feedback loop.
But I was never scared, just like no modern horror game has scared me either. I eagerly await the monster. I also fully expect that many people will disagree with me. How scary is that? That is an invalid reaction. I reject this idea because I don't have to do that. Please don't kill me, please don't kill me, please don't kill me. Holy shit, I'm going to die. I was trapped in this situation. You could be. Or are you appreciating the fiendishly realized immortal force of nature that can never be killed, only stricken with inconvenience? The other important thing is to make sure mistakes are always the fault of
EA and Activision